Welcome to My Jane, My Story, the only show that enables women to share their own secrets and insights to wellness, one story at a time.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. Happy September. Happy first Thursday of September. This is Diane McConaughey from My Jane. And to tell you a little bit about My Jane, our mission is helping you own your wellness. And we do this through community, education, and exploration of cannabis to address our biggest health concerns like sleep, pain, and stress. And we all find that there is so much information out there, and I'm sure some of us get confused on what's real and what's not. So we decided we needed to come together and share stories of real life experiences so we can be better and do better by helping one another. So we like to share stories and talk to different experts in the community to just learn about this wonderful plant. And before I introduce our guest for today, I want to give you guys just this cool little fact that I love, and I love to tell people. Did you know that cannabis and beer are cousins? Beer, hops, and cannabis are from the same family of flowering plants. I think that's a very cool little factoid to start the day. So today, I'm so excited to introduce this person that is sitting across from me. This is Candace Hawes from OC NORML. And Candace was named High Times Freedom Fighter of the Month in November of 2012. She was also named one of Orange County's most influential people in 2014 by the Orange County Register, as well as one of the 100 most interesting people in OC by the OC Weekly in 2015. So I am so excited to introduce Candace Hawes from OC NORML. Hi, Candace.
Hi, thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for coming. I'm just so excited because I know that you are one of the pioneers in this industry. And so I would love to hear first, and I know everyone else would as well, how did you start learning about cannabis, and tell us a little bit about your cannabis story from the beginning?
Yeah, well, I've always been inclined to use cannabis over other recreational substances like alcohol. As a young adult, when I was in college, I went on a vacation out of state and I got a possession charge. I was on the track to be an attorney and I was really excited about my career. But unfortunately, because I had cannabis on me, I was arrested, and I was informed by that state, who had a zero tolerance policy at the time, that not only was I going to be arrested, have my car impounded, but that they were going to take away my financial aid to go to school. Wow. And that also they could prevent me from getting a professional license in the future because the amount that I had on me was a felony.
Wow.
So this really kind of shocked me, and I just really didn't feel like this is right. That how is it that someone that's a cannabis user, not harming anybody else,
exactly,
is going to be punished for the rest of their life so many ways, so drastically and so seriously.
Wow.
So I was really kind of worked up about this whole thing. And I went online when I got home and I found an organization called NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And it just so happened that they were having their annual conference. And so I reached out to them, told them my story, and they invited me to come down. And I was just amazed. I was, for the first time ever, in a room with professional people, doctors, lawyers, even celebrities. Woody Harrelson was there at that conference.
Cool.
And they all felt exactly like me, that
Wow.
cannabis wasn't a substance that was harmful in my own life or in society, and that they were working towards, changing laws, advocating them. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I felt like I was so harmed that, I had to do something about it. And there's nothing really you can do back to the government except for change laws that you think that are wrong.
Exactly.
So as a student, 21 years old, after that conference, I put a message out there, the NORML network, saying that I wanted to start a chapter. And at my first meeting, we had, doctors and business people and, really serious players come and want to get involved in the Orange County area to try and move things forward. And ever since then, 16 years later, we've been one of the most consistent chapters. We have meetings every single month. We have more and more people coming all the time. People think, Orange County is such a conservative area, but there's actually a lot of people here that are pretty liberal and that, believe that, cannabis shouldn't be illegal, that we shouldn't be looked down in society, that we should be able to provide for our families and use this substance that we feel is more beneficial for us than, prescription drugs or alcohol. So, it kind of just started and it hasn't stopped ever since. Yeah. And you look back and it's been 16 years, and you have this wild perspective on, how Orange County used to be back in 2003. And, the DEA was legitimately coming down and arresting patients, sick people that were dying for having plants. Not even that many plants. Yeah. I remember back in 2004, a gentleman, Michael Teal, was a patient, and he was arrested by the DEA and probably is still in federal prison here for just being a patient. We have other, players that were young in the industry that, have 30-year sentences for things that are now legal. So it's amazing to look back and see where we were and, how this is a completely different industry now.
Yeah, well, and tell us tell us more about NORML and what exactly NORML does. I mean, give us a little bit about that.
So like I said, NORML is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and we have chapters all across the United States and also in some other countries. It was started over 50 years ago by Keith Strope. He had just recently graduated law school, was living in the Washington, D.C. area, and was just, an avid cannabis user. And he said, there's not one single organization out there looking out for the cannabis user. There's no advocacy organization, no one trying to work with the government to stop these horrible policies. Back in the 1970s, the federal government was actually spraying cannabis fields in Mexico with paraquat, thinking that, the cannabis users, they're going to hear about it and they're not going to use it. And these drug dealers won't sell it to people if they know it's been sprayed with poison. But, it still made its way through the chain and people were getting sick. And so, NORML was one of the first organizations to try to work with the government to stop these policies that were affecting cannabis users. And since then, they've been involved on the federal level and on the state level, probably in every single marijuana law that's been reformed ever since the 70s. Interesting fact, too. In 1970, the first ever donor to National NORML was Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Foundation.
Oh, isn't that an interesting fact?
And so, Keith Strope actually has an amazing story. He has a book that you can find on Google. I forget, the name escapes me. But he actually was lucky enough to smoke weed on the White House roof with Jimmy Carter's son. So a lot of really cool things. NORML has, been involved in, the marijuana industry from the very beginning. They're, like the Coca-Cola of the marijuana nonprofits. They've at the beginning did everything, patients, hemp, legalization. Now we have all these other organizations that have kind of taken their own little area. We have cannabis business organizations, patient organizations, hemp organizations, you name it. But before there was anybody, there was NORML.
Yeah. And you've seen such a huge expansion in 16 years. Because 16 years ago, cannabis was nowhere. Really, it was like underground.
Back, 16 years ago, if you wanted, medical marijuana had passed 1996, so it was still 6 or 7 years after that. And there was hardly any dispensaries. I remember us patients used to kind of meet up, and we would drive all the way to LA, and there was 1 or 2 dispensaries down there. There was one called the Little Yellow House that used to be Charlie Chaplin's house, cool. Back down in West Hollywood there, and we used to make our voyages down there. And it's just, it was very sparse, and it was actually hard to get a hold of good cannabis. Back then all we had was just, flour with THC. We didn't have all the different, fancy delivery methods that we have now and different companies. And it's just been amazing.
And nothing was tested at that point either, of course. No. So, you really didn't know exactly what you were getting. And
I would say probably not until like the last 10 years was there even a place to get it tested.
Wow. What an amazing story. I loved, I've been to some of the NORML meetings and I just love what the organization does and what you've done around here. I just think it's so necessary to, and you do a lot of education as well.
We are a 501c3 nonprofit educational organization. So most of our work is educational. At times though, kind of depending on what is needed in the community, we've done other things. We at one time formed a PAC in the city of Santa Ana and we gathered 13,000 signatures and we got a measure on the ballot. The city subsequently put a measure up against ours, and that's the one that actually got the higher voter approval. They got 60%. The NORML initiative had 54%. So that's the one that you actually see in play right here in Santa Ana. So at times, we've done different things. Back in the early 2000s, we were doing, protests against the DEA, for arresting patients. And, now it's really kind of educating people, especially all the new consumers that we have, people that didn't touch cannabis for many, many years because of its illegality. Now we have this market where anybody can go walk into a dispensary if they're over 21 and, buy up to 1,000 milligrams if they want of cannabis products, and hopefully they're reading the labels and being smart about usage. But, we reach out to all types of audiences, from the new users to the seniors to, the lawmakers.
Well, what does a new user need to look for? Like, if they're looking at labels, what do you think? What do you tell them? Like, look for this or look for that, or?
Well, a new user would probably definitely also want to use a licensed dispensary because then that product is tested and it's labeled correctly and it's consistent and it's dependable. So you would also want to make sure that that hopefully the bud tender would tell them to, go low, go slow, start by microdosing, 1 to 2.5 milligrams to start.
Okay.
Also, it's important for them to know what kind of delivery method they're using and how there's different onset times and different durations.
Right.
So if they're a new user, they would probably be more inclined to use like a cannabis flower method, or even a sublingual or a topical. Edibles, once you take that edible, you're on that ride for 6 to 8 hours.
Right. Not much going back.
Yeah. So read those directions, find out, how strong the product is, how much you need to take, and, just be cautious.
And what do you recommend? What do you tell somebody who is okay? So I take 1 to 2 milligrams. What am I supposed to feel? What do you tell people?
Well, usually I tell them, if it's a product that has some THC, that there's going to be some slight euphoria, and then if the effects, that they feel are not pleasant, that, with more use of it, just like any prescription drug, that those things will go away. So a lot of times people say, I'm worried about being too tired or too hungry or something like that, and, if they're really trying to replace a medication with cannabis, that's something similar that you would go through with the prescription medicine, and just try to, ride that out, and those unpleasant symptoms, side effects will go away. But some people like the feeling of cannabis. They shouldn't be scared of it. A lot of times when we're explaining it, we talk about, THC is psychoactive, and that word sounds so scary.
Right, it does.
So I say, psychoactivity is like euphoria.
Right.
It's like feeling a little good, a little light. It's not something to be scared of. It's the same as like drinking a glass of wine, or
Exactly.
having a drink. It's nothing too overwhelming. But to make sure that they're in a comfortable place, and just I always like to remind them there's no possible way you could ever die from cannabis. It's not tied to the same body systems that control your heartbeat or your lung function. So if you do take too much, you just need to give it time, stay hydrated, eat, distract yourself with some entertainment, or take a nap, and you will live to try cannabis another day.
Yeah, just breathe through it. That's what I tell people. Just breathe, and it'll be okay.
Next time you don't need that much.
Yeah, right. And it's all a learning process, right?
Yeah.
And so and so you must have a lot of really amazing stories. I know you do. So what have you found has been the most benefit in this industry over the last 16 years for patients?
For patients have really kind of been left behind. I feel like this market now is more geared towards, the recreational or adult use consumer.
Okay.
But I would say the different delivery methods has been really nice. Now you don't have to only smoke cannabis or buy an expensive vaporizer device. There's healthier alternatives. They're very discreet and very easy to use. So I think that's really cool. How we have cannabis in almost any imaginable form you can think of.
Right, I know.
From, oils to balms to Band-Aids to suppositories to sex loops to inhalers to breath strips to, little like almost like a tobacco pouch in the corner of your mouth, to drinks, to everything you can imagine.
You can think of,
cosmetics, cannabis is in there. So I think that's really neat for the patient population, and also just how consistent and reliable it is for dosing.
Right.
Back in the old days, you had no idea how much you were taking. And so a lot of people have stories of back in the day, I had some brownies somebody made me, and I got too high, and it was really horrible experience. That is something of the past really now. You can really be cautious of how much you're taking. So I think that would probably be the best thing that I've seen come out of the industry for patients.
Oh, good. And you guys do some senior education as well, don't you?
Yeah, I love working with seniors. Out of every demographic, out there, I think seniors are the ones that are most willing to learn something new, which is surprising, because we think of seniors as having lived their life and having, their opinions formed, but they're very, very open to try cannabis and very excited about it. We have, people coming 92 years old, 55 to 92 to almost 100 coming on our shuttles to go for tours and educational presentations at dispensaries. I love a lot of the seniors talking about how excited they are to, call the younger generations. They can't wait to tell their grandson or granddaughter what they did today.
Hey, guess what I'm doing?
So that's been really nice. And, I just like to think that, we're really helping that population live a better life.
And so you said shuttles. So you guys do like a weekly, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I work with one dispensary, Bud and Bloom in Santa Ana, and they do monthly shuttles from Laguna Woods.
Wow.
So every third Tuesday of the month, we bus a group from there. We've been doing it for over 2 years, and we still get at least 30, sometimes 50 people every single month.
I imagine.
And then we always have new groups reaching out. This month, I'm actually doing 3 shuttles.
That's so amazing,
and they're from
Candace.
affluent communities. We have, groups coming from like Corona Del Mar and Newport Coast, so it's not something, that the seniors are looking down on, like it's something that, bad people do or anything. It's, like affluent people who are respectable, they're your regular grandma, grandpa, retired, professional, even, city, or government officials, are now looking at this as something that's acceptable.
Yeah, and I think that's so great because it's that fear, like you're talking about the fear, and when somebody comes to you and they are very fearful, what do you say, or how do you kind of bring them over into that cannabis side if they're really afraid of what it's going to do, or
Yeah, well, people are afraid of different things. We get a lot of people who are afraid of being on some sort of government list,
Yeah.
And I have to just,
Are they going to know? Can they see me?
can they see how much I'm buying and I'm going to lose my job, and so a lot with those people, I have to let them know that, the state, the government really isn't looking for the cannabis consumers. Had they been, I would have been gone a long time ago. So that's not really a fear, but, it is a lot of concern from people. A lot of people are just, because people talk a lot about CBD now, and the best way to use cannabis is non-psychoactive CBD. I get a lot of people that are afraid to try a product that has a ratio of both.
Okay.
Because they've heard about the bad things about THC, but a lot of the health benefits for many years were only found in THC. We only just barely learned about CBD, and CBD doesn't do everything. It's very good for inflammation, but it's not as good for other conditions people are trying to treat. So, I just tell people, again, start low and start slow. You can start using it in the evening, so you can build your tolerance then when you're not trying to do your activities. And, as long as you're careful, and responsible, there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Do you recommend that they start with edibles, or what do you recommend they start with?
I would probably say not edibles, just because it is so hard to figure out your dosing. Because like I said, you take it and it's in your system for a long period of time. I think actually in the inhalation method, like smoking a joint or a pipe or a bong, is probably the easiest for new users.
Really?
Only
That's
because
surprising.
As you go, you can kind of feel the effects right away. You can take one hit, and then within like a couple seconds, like if you feel good, if you need more, or if you're good. How many times have you been in a circle, passing around a joint, and someone's like, I'm good. You're like, you can tell pretty quickly if you're feeling good, like where you want to. And those effects go away pretty quickly as well. Within like an hour, they've worn off. So for new users, I think that's the easiest way in. Although a lot of people are not very into smoking if they've never done that before. So in that case, I would suggest like a vaporizer pen.
Okay. So that's a good way to start. And because I've heard most people say in the industry, well, have them start with a really mild edible. And I kind of feel like edibles.
Yeah. Every way of using cannabis, it's like a different product, substance altogether. Edibles, because the way that they're processed in your body, it's you feel the effects, I think, almost like 4 or 5 times more than smoking.
Well, so I guess smoking, they could get the effects for the first time, right, and then see how they feel, and okay, this isn't so bad, maybe then they can try edibles, because edibles I think are so much, because then we're not inhaling into our lungs and things like that.
A lot of the seniors start with topicals too. Okay. I've noticed like people saying, my mom was so against it, and then I gave her this cream and it worked really well, and then after that she was willing to try like a sublingual. So, there is a natural progression to, where people feel comfortable.
Well, I guess it's like alcohol. I mean, I can't help but put this to alcohol because, being in college years ago and starting with just mild things of alcohol or doing way too much and being so sick. I mean, and then just learning. And then same with cannabis, right? You just have to learn what you
can. It's about responsible use.
Exactly. I like that. Responsible use. Yeah. So I want to go back to a little bit about the legalities and just what you're seeing with people being arrested. I mean, are people still being arrested more often?
I wouldn't say I think it's actually taken a huge downcline. I know people who worked as court qualified cannabis experts, and that field has almost completely gone away, except for people are still getting caught trying to drive and smoke cannabis or under the influence. Those cases are still popping up, but not so many cases for just people generally using since Prop 64 passed. We still do have people in other states, though, getting arrested. And believe it or not, there are still people in the southern states, especially, that are getting almost lifelong sentences for cannabis convictions. That still is happening. But luckily, not so much in California. I would say more of like the DUIs. And then I think the Bureau will soon start cracking down on these unlicensed collectives. So I think we'll start seeing a wave of, those kind of cases coming through. But a lot of these criminal defense attorneys that used to specialize in cannabis have changed now into being business attorneys that are helping these people apply for licenses in different cities.
Okay.
So
because they don't have the business
they
otherwise.
don't have the criminal clients that they used to.
And what about people that have been incarcerated in the past? I mean, are they still...
Yeah.
They're still...
There's a gentleman, Aaron Sandusky, who was arrested up north, and he actually was working with the FBI to turn in a city council person that was extorting him for money, and the FBI turned him into the DEA, and he actually got, I think, like 20 years sentence, and he's still in jail, and we're trying to fight for appeal because, I mean, he was... following the law to the best of his ability, cooperating with law enforcement. And unfortunately, he was just one of those got picked off before things changed, but he wasn't doing anything different than all the guys are that are, legally have a license now. So can you imagine how that feels, to be in the California prison system?
Right.
With a long sentence of something that's now, completely legitimate.
Oh, that would just be, I thought it would just be so difficult to, and I think it's so great that NORML actually stands up for these people and really, bands together to get this to change.
And there's other organizations that specialize in that as well. So.
Oh, well, and so what is it like to be a pioneer in this industry? I mean, because you are. I mean, I look at you as a pioneer. I mean, you've been doing this for so long, and how is that for you to watch the change? Is it exciting?
It's interesting. It's very interesting to see, like how things are now, and how they wouldn't have been this way maybe if we wouldn't have, been involved, but how we are very much kind of forgotten nowadays, a lot of the dispensaries that I go into in Santa Ana won't even let me leave business cards for NORML. And it's like, do you know that we're the ones that did this voter initiative? So, as the market and the community or the industry gets bigger and bigger, I think a lot of the new guys don't really look to see like where we've been, and how important it is to support these groups that have gotten to this point. NORML operates on like probably $7,500 a year.
Wow.
And that's like the marketing budget for one of these cannabis companies. Exactly. So it would be nicer if we, had better education, to let them, know what we've done and how we could do more with their help.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I tell people. I always send people to NORML. Like if you want to learn about cannabis, education, whatever, go to NORML.
Yeah,
you guys
need like
always
a billboard. We are NORML. This is what NORML is.
I know. We need to embrace this and just really enjoy this process. And I know but you being in this for so long, you have fought this battle. I mean, you have seen it from good to bad to bad to good, and you just see it shift all the time.
It's nice because, back in the early 2000s, no city official would take us seriously. We would, get laughed off the podium at city council meetings, and then we weren't considered a real issue, in the community. And so it's not until now that we're actually like a legitimate industry. And so it is nice, to see, the Bureau of Cannabis Control and everything that they've done and how we are, respected as an industry and we're acknowledged. And, that is really relieving because it was getting really frustrated there for a long time, trying to get things done, and we were just kind of like a joke. And now we're actually seen as a real, important population. And I think that's because, the cannabis investors have kind of trickled through the levels of society, and now it's, these people, who are, elected officials now all have friends, have cannabis businesses. And so I think that's why things are really kind of starting to change for our way.
Yeah. Well, and people are seeing what it's doing, what cannabis is actually doing for people. My mom took it and rubbed it on and she felt so much better. And
doing for people or making for people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, well, and because I see NORML at any cannabis event I go to. I always see your booth. Yeah, and I just always, it makes me smile because I know that
we have a great group. I definitely couldn't do it all without them.
Yeah, you guys do a lot, and I'm thankful that I found you. A couple years ago, and Keiko Beatty is the one who sent me to you. So
she's amazing.
The cannabis angel.
And we need more NORML chapters. So if anybody listening here lives in California or any other state, definitely contact NORML and find out how you can kind of start organizing. Because just like me, most areas have a lot of people that want to get active, just nobody that really takes that initiative to organize it. So, put yourself out there and they'll be surprised, how many people want to get involved.
That's cool.
It's really cool, the things that I've been able to do, from testifying in Washington, D.C. to, going to the DEA's office in Los Angeles, to lots of different things. I think I've definitely made a change here. And
Good.
Anybody can do that.
And you are a pioneer, and I'm so grateful for you because of what you've done and how you've pushed this through. So how did your parents, being in college, you're here, okay, I'm going to go to law school. How did your parents take this when you said, oh, by the way?
I actually didn't tell anybody. I just kind of handled it,
wow.
Sucked it up and just handled my business. And, so they didn't really know about any of the legal stuff that was happening. But I mean, once I founded this group, my mom was actually the first secretary for our organization. So, they've always been really supportive. Yeah. I've always been that person that can use cannabis though, and was still a really good student, and put myself through college, and it's been really a self-motivator, opposite of the stereotype.
Yeah.
And so they've been pretty supportive of my decisions, which is nice.
Great. Yeah.
Because still nowadays, people have to hide their cannabis use or their association with the industry even, and that's got to be really tiring.
Oh, yeah. And, especially back then when you're, 16 years ago, when there's nothing, you have nothing to support you on it, know. So, tell us what you do. This is our wellness part, and I'd love to hear what you do to take care of you.
Since I've been using cannabis so long, I started smoking, and I still find that that's the best for me. I use cannabis for anxiety and for mood. And so when I kind of get in that funk, when I'm just not feeling good or, thinking a certain way, then I find that cannabis helps take me out of that mindset. And it really kind of puts me in this frame of mind where I'm really appreciative and, I'm kind of realizing what I have around me and all the nice things that I have. And so that's how I use cannabis most frequently. I also do use it socially, of course, but I use it medically as well. I also have issues with my legs. I was in braces as a child for a long time, and I was tippy-toed, and I had surgeries and stuff like that and casts for a long time, so I have a lot of pain in my legs. And so I like the bath soaks. I like those as well.
Yeah,
those are really cool.
Great.
I also just recently started using transdermal patches.
Oh, okay.
And I really liked those. I was really surprised. I didn't think that, it would pack enough punch for somebody that's been using cannabis for so long, but they were really effective, and I really liked that.
Cool. So you get to see the new things coming out too, right?
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Well, how can people get a hold of OC NORML? Well, how do they get to you?
Yeah, so we have a couple Instagram pages. Normal Orange County, or else I'm the OC Canna Queen. You can also find our website at www.orangecountynormal.org, and we also have Twitter, Orange County Normal.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good, because I think anybody out there, if you have any questions or anything with cannabis, Candace is the person to go to.
And if you want to find out about pending legislation, we
Yeah.
have monthly meetings that are free and open to the public.
Great. And so I would love to bring more people to your meetings because every time I went to the meetings, I always learned so much. You had some great speakers and just some really wonderful things that you talked about. So, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I love My Jane. I was really excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to come today and that we got to, kind of tell a little bit more about NORML. So thank you everybody today for being here and for being a wonderful part of the My Jane community. And remember, if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, to rate, review, and subscribe so more people can find the My Jane, My Story and own their wellness, because that's what we're here for. We're here to support each other in any way we can with health or cannabis, and because we all need to get more sleep, have less pain and less stress, and there's so many wonderful things that cannabis can do. So thank you again, and maybe we'll hear from Candace again. We never know. So have a great day today, you guys. Enjoy your first Thursday in September. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to My Jane, My Story. If you want to learn more, you can join the My Jane community at myjane.com. Get instant access to our Facebook group, Facebook community, educational resources, and updates on My Jane products and special events. And for personal attention right now, you can also pick up the phone and call 833-MY-JANE2. That's MYJANE2. And speak to your own wellness concierge, because it's time to own your wellness. Be well.